Now, today, I've brought back Ejlal and, in fact, my niece, Sumern. So, to walk you through this three-step sequence, we're going to focus on Muslim identity and what exactly that means. Number two, communication. And then number three, the home environment. So now, to my left is my niece, Sumern. Welcome to the show. You're going to have to speak louder than that.
No,
Come on now.
Here. Okay, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. And to my right, we have our returning guest, Ejlal. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I like that smooth voice of yours. Are you going to break out into a nasheed, man?
No.
All right, all good. So let's get to this, guys. We have two youth, one to my left, one to my right. We have a female perspective. We have a male perspective. Both youth, and I cannot stress this enough. So for our viewers who want to understand their own children, who want to understand their own teens, in their home, maybe their own nieces and nephews, their own sons and daughters, this is a must-watch episode for the next 15 minutes. All right, in terms of Muslim identity, Sumern, I've raised you as you yourself call me, dad number two. Okay, I'm always humbled by that. Sweetheart, I've seen you grow up in front of my own eyes. Okay, you just recently got married. You're in university on your way to become a lawyer or a veterinarian. I'm with you with whichever path you take. But tell me, because you have that unique position of having grown up now as a second generation Canadian, consider me the first, so you are second generation Canadian. So what does that mean in terms of forming a Muslim identity, and especially from a Muslima identity? What does that mean? Is there a definition?
Okay, so I would say in terms of forming a Muslim identity, it wouldn't matter where you live, whether it's Canada or Pakistan, you're back home where there's majority Muslims, or you're here where it's majority non-Muslims. It's more about how you view deen and how you view the priorities that have been set for us and that we should be prioritizing. So, for example, I did start wearing my hijab at a very young age in grade 2, and obviously at that age, all people know it's like sort of on and off for kids, you know. But I know for a fact, like personally, I only started taking my hijab seriously and respecting the purpose of the hijab when I was in about grade 10 or grade 11. Mm-hmm. So I was wearing it, but did I respect it? Did I understand it? No, not fully. And I would have to say that in this sense, yeah, then your environment really comes into play. But you see non-hijabis and you see Muslim women who don't, I would say, obviously or visually represent the Muslim identity in both Muslim countries and non-Muslim countries. Okay. Right? But where you're living when you're living in a place where there are majority non-Muslims, I think I would have to say it is a little bit more difficult to understand the hijab, because you also see their perspective, right? And you're like, okay, well, they're not being harmed, and they're also living the same life I'm living, and they're also working for the same career I'm working for, and I'm going to the same school they're going to. So what really is the difference?
Right.
Right? And then you see other Muslim kids who are doing other things that non-Muslims are doing. And they're not exactly halal, or they're not exactly right. And then you further ask yourself, okay, then what's the difference, right? They're doing the same thing. And then there are other hijabis and other Muslim boys who have beards, and they may wear jubbas on the Jummah. But are they representing their Muslim identity? Have they formed their Muslim identity, or is it just the front? Then I guess you would just have to remind yourself you can't judge anyone. But your Muslim identity really just, like I said, depends on your understanding of the deen rather than what is visual and where you're living. You could wear a hijab, but you might not have the right understanding of the deen or the right understanding of the hijab. You could be growing out your beard, having hair to the shoulders, and wearing a jubbah, but you might not understand the importance of it, the benefits of it that our religion has put out there for us.
Ejlal, what about you? Like, you grew up here as well. You're already rocking the beard. You
Small one, but
you do like a beautiful Arabic nasheed. You are a hafiz of the Quran. You will do the azan. I've seen it in person so many times. You have your own YouTube channel. Like clearly, you're walking the path of both deen and dunya, to use the Arabic words, of both this world and of your faith. So how do you do it? What tips can you give to other youth, like Sumern is saying, for someone who is trying to practice the faith, either visually, maybe internally, maybe going through that progression, but are you on that balanced path yourself? Like what tips can you give?
So I would say that I agree with some of the stuff that Simran said, but one of the things that I want to point out is that environment has a huge effect on a person, right? Let's take high school, for example, right? Grade 9 and grade 10 is kind of those years where everybody is not just as a Muslim, but they're actually trying to find their identity in general, right? You're going through the age of 14, 15, 16, where you're from a child, you're becoming an adult, right? And so a lot of kids, including myself, sometimes you go through those, sometimes you go through that identity issue that, like as I'm growing older, who am I as a person?
Yeah.
What do I want to do? What do I want to be? I remember that even before high school started, I was just finishing hifz, and I told my dad and my mom, like, you know what, right now, and my beard was slowly coming in, like, those baby hair, right? And I told my dad, I'm like, I don't want to grow a full beard right now. My dad has a full beard, and I told him that. I'm like, I don't want to grow a full beard. And I also told him, I'm like, I'm telling you this before I start high school so that it doesn't look like, high school is the thing that influenced me to not grow a full beard. So they told me, they're like, okay, you know what? Don't shave it because shaving is haram, but keep a little bit, and then gradually, whenever you feel like you can grow it, grow it. So in the back of my mind, I have this that, when I get older, when I'm able to grow a full beard, inshallah I will, right? So similarly with a lot of other kids, everybody they have their sort of their boundary where they're like, okay, this is something that I can do right now. This is something that I'm working towards. This is something that I want to do.
Uh-huh.
But there's a lot of peer pressure in high school. High school is full of peer pressure, right? So a lot of kids, they do get lost in finding their Muslim identity during that time because they see that everybody's going this way, and then your deen tells you to go this way, right? And
Right.
it's very difficult. So especially living in a country like Canada, where the influence is so strong, you say that I'm balanced. I don't think I'm balanced, and a lot of other students who an older person might think that they look pretty balanced. We go in Jamaat, we go to Islamic youth events, Muslim events, all that type of stuff. But on the inside, you still have this. Okay, you know what? You're a Muslim. You're Hafiz. You talk about Deen. You talk to people. You come to the masjid, right? But then on the side, there are things which, as a young teen, we end up getting involved in. And then it's like your mind is racing. You're thinking that, okay, you know what I'm doing, I know it's wrong, but it's difficult for me to get out of this right away. I have so many examples of friends who they go in Jamaat and it's an eye opener for them. They're like, you know what, all this time I thought that I was actually a good Muslim, right? And they're pure from heart. But it's just that because they did not get that environment, right? They did not get that environment. They were connected to the masjid, but in a point where, coming for salah, maybe sitting in ta'lim, and that's pretty much it, right? So they go in Jamaat and they're like, oh, you know what? It's an eye-opener for them that there are so many aspects of religion that I did not even know about.
So now, never mind, I won't touch upon going to any takedowns.
Yeah.
And I see the smile on your face, but this is a phase. This is definitely a phase that all youth go through. And I'll ask someone about the communication piece, because that's point number 2 in our sequence. Now, even the Prophet Muhammad said that when you are a youth, i.e. when you're a teen, it's a wild time. Those were his words. And I'm paraphrasing not so much, but the word wild is in there when you do the Arabic translation. So as a parent, I'll ask you, and I'm looking straight into the camera for a reason. You were also a teen once. So just understand that this is a phase. Now let's get to communication point number 2. To communicate, as Ejlal was saying, He told his parents, "Hey, I'm not gonna grow the beard. I'm going into high school. I don't want it to kind of influence me." What kind of communication tips would you give?
Okay,
It
so
doesn't have to be from a Muslim perspective, just in general.
in general, so for communication, I would definitely say, like Ijlal, when I was way younger, I went to a school where I was actually the only hijabi, and it was just up to grade 6 at school. So you would see everyone on the playground. It's very odd. You sort of have the older kid friends
I
and the younger
remember.
kid friends. I was the only hijabi in the whole school, and the Muslim friends I did have were not from very religious backgrounds. So I was like to my parents, I was like, I don't want to wear it. And so obviously being parents, they weren't going to exactly give in to my request without at least explaining it to me. So they went, the whole, if they jump off a cliff, would you jump off a cliff? And then
That's
they
the
tried
brown classic.
yeah. And then they still, but they, sat me down and were like, you're doing a good thing. Would you stop doing the good thing for someone who's not doing the right thing? And you should be an influence. You should be proud. But when you're a kid, that doesn't really click in.
Yeah.
And like I said, it didn't click in for a while. It really didn't. In terms of communications, I would say obviously, other than that, I have been a very open communicator with my parents and my family. I think, after middle school, I started getting really close to my mom. In middle school, I had a rough patch where I wasn't able to communicate. I felt that I wasn't able to communicate with my mom. And I didn't realize that she, coming from an immigrant background,
Right.
A Pakistani background, a strict religious and like Desi background, she was doing everything she could to tell me, I'm here for you.
Completely.
I'm here for you and I will listen to you. Like, I understand you have these differences. Come talk to me. And in my head, I was like, no, she's not going to understand. I cannot go to her. I will not speak to her. Like, she won't understand the social media aspect and my friends aspect and, the turning into a teenager aspect. And the struggles that I'm having with my own Muslim identity and my own identity. So, but she was there for me. I really have to give it to her. She was there for me and she always gave me that open door that I'm here to communicate, come and talk to me. And then in high school, I realized after school, I would tell my mom everything that would happen. And if there was anything happening at school that I felt, hey, this is something I may not be able to go home and tell my mom about, I would immediately feel guilty. So that's why I think communication is so important with a trusted adult, with your parents, with your guardians. And another aspect of communication, I would say, is friends.
Right.
Bringing in the Muslim identity as well. After you understand Deen and have a good understanding of your Deen and you've formed your own Muslim identity, the next part of your identity is your friends, who you hang out with.
Right.
And if you can communicate on the Deen level with your friends, trust me, you don't need more than I think 1 or 2 friends if you have those good friends.
Yeah.
Right? If I can tell my friends, hey, oh my goodness, you know what? I haven't been praying my sunnahs lately, and I feel so guilty. Guys, pray for me or send me some tips. And they understand that. That's the biggest, I think, reward you can ask for. And it's a huge step in feeling like you can communicate and in communication in general, having good friends and family.
Now, guys, in terms of the home environment, right? What tips can you give from a youth lens on the home environment? Now, it's easy for me as a parent to kind of say, oh, parents are role models. In fact, they are. They have to be, whether you want to accept that role or not. But from your view, how does that all kind of work? Does it work? Does it not work?
The home environment is in fact a huge chunk of a child is supposed to have that support at home, where it also ties with communication, where a child comes home and he should be able to talk to his parents. As Sumern was saying that she had a rough patch with her parents, I did too in grade 9 and 10, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but what I think is that because as boys we have more outside exposure, much more outside exposure, even in high school. So because of that, we tend to, I guess, stray away from the family much more than girls would, right? And because of that, it's like, I would come home from school and I would just be locked up in my room, to the point where I don't want to talk to anybody. When it's time for food, I'll come down, eat my food, back up in my room, right? So for about 1.5 to 2 years, this is how grade 9 and 10. That's how it was, right? Until and my mom and my dad would not understand, like, what's going on. Like, we raised him, we did everything for him, which they did, right? So what's going on? But it's just that you go through that phase,
Yeah.
and parents at that time need to be, understanding, and it's like my dad usually gives the example that parenting is like if you have a fishing rod, if you pull it too hard, it's gonna snap, right? And if you leave it loose, then the fish is gone, right?
Right,
So the same
right.
thing with the child, that if during this age, if you tug on him too hard, you're gonna lose him forever.
Yeah.
Right? So slowly, then me and my mom, we started, like, we would have like late night conversations where like 3 hours would just go by and we're talking, right? And that's when our relationship with my mom and my dad, it started getting better. So that type of home environment where the child, you give him their space, but at the same time, slowly you try to understand that what's going on, because every child goes through this phase.
Yeah.
Or I don't know about like in the olden days or maybe back home, but children over here, high school is really stressful for them, especially coming from an Islamic background where your family is Islamic, but you see the total opposite of that in school. It is very hard to balance out your Islamic morals and values with the type of pressure and the type of environment that you're getting.
Sumern, what about you? I've known your parents for a long time now.
Yeah.
Okay, like I've said at the beginning of this video cast, I basically raised you. So what's your take on this?
So I would agree with Ejlal. I mean, the home environment is very important. What a child comes home to and what a child is being taught, and what their parents offer them. So personally, I would say my home environment, my house is my comfort zone. Like, alhamdulillah, my house is my comfort zone. My home is my comfort zone. My bedroom is definitely my comfort zone, like Ejlal said. Many
I don't know if it was a
thoughts,
comfort zone, or is it just that I just want to be away from everything else.
Yeah, so many depressive episodes, panic attacks, thoughts, just some alone time and happy moments as well. When you just realize that I'm comfortable in my own presence. So again, like I said, home environment is really important.
Yeah.
I would say that I feel just for the parents out there, not a teenager anymore, but who was recently a teenager, and still quite young and living with my parents right now. Don't think that your tarbiyat, your upbringing, and your teachings are going to waste. They're not. They're not. Keep making dua, though. I think dua is a huge blessing Allah has bestowed upon us.
Completely.
That He says, you can come to me and ask me.
100%.
And parents, they get so frantic and they get so worried that they forget to have trust in Allah. And I've seen that in my mom. The way she prays her namaz on time and makes dua, the way my father makes dua, he's constantly reading Quran. And now that I am a little bit older, I feel like I've come back home, in a sense. All their teachings are always at the back of my mind. Yeah, when I was a teenager, I would choose not to follow them. That doesn't mean I don't know that they're right. I know that they were right.
Right.
I know that their teachings are important, and I know that they still hold value, and they will hold value as I get older. I will need them. And there are many things that, for example, my parents, for many, many years, we sit in the car and they'll just be like, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, Allahu Akbar. So, and I realize now that I'm driving, I automatically, I'll be at a red light and I'll yawn and I'm like, Allahu Akbar, alhamdulillah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. And so they don't realize that.
Yeah.
But it's their tarbiyat and their upbringing and small things that they do that, like you had previously mentioned to me in a conversation, we're like sponges.
Yeah.
And I think we're like sponges for a very long time, at least up to the age of maybe 24, 25, especially in this day and age where we don't mature as quicker because we don't have as many responsibilities. We're still kids for a very long time nowadays.
This is
right?
why when at the day of Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us, right, that what did you do during your youth years?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the reason for that is because these are very fragile years.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who are much older, and they're either they were teenagers when my dad was older and he was taking them in Jamaat, right? And at that time, and whenever whatever I was going through in high school, grade 9 and 10, so I would talk to them because they were also born and raised here. They went through the exact same stuff that I went through, right? And now they're married. They have the best relationship with their parents. They take teenagers and kids in Jamaat now themselves, right? So I spoke to them. I'm like, like, how did you guys do it, right? How did you turn your whole life around where your parents gave you that upbringing, right? And then after that, during your teenage years, you were like totally the opposite of that, right? And then in your 20s or your 30s, like you guys,
how did you come back?
Flipped. How did you come back? It's not even coming back. It's just that, you realize that, okay, you know what? Like, this is the right way of life. And you start walking that path, right? And so the tarbiyat that the parents do, as she was saying, you tend to notice it after. You won't notice the effects of it right there and then, which I think is a thing that, parents will get scared that, okay, I spend so much time on my child, right? What is he gonna do when he gets a little older, right? But it's just that like you plant a tree, you're not gonna expect the fruit to come out of it right away.
Exactly.
Right.
It's gonna grow, and then after that, it's gonna grow fruit, right? So I think like that's where we as teenagers, or we as youth should also understand that the tarbiyah that our parents are doing, it's for a purpose. Right?
Agreed.
And parents should also understand that, it's going to take time for a child to blossom based on the tarbiyah that they give them.
Agreed. Like you and I, how we were discussing, I don't know, a week ago about adulting, right?
Adulting?
You're doing that now, aren't you? You're doing that now.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand. I mean, I guess in terms of like home environment, again, kids forget that they also have a role in the home environment. And I think bringing back to the parents, they have to remind their kids that, hey, you play a role in what our home environment will be, right? I'm just going to take like the Desi culture as an example. If your
Brown
dad's
culture.
upset, the house environment is not great. Like, you could have been having the best day and your dad might not even be mad at you. But if he's just upset, it really takes a toll. So, and that's just being upset. So imagine upbringing and like an everyday environment and what your house and your parents and you yourself, your siblings bring into the home every single day. Your home environment makes a difference. And it really sets the scene for what future generations will come into, right? If you've lived in an environment for 20, 25 years, you're probably gonna, if you don't realize and you don't learn, and you just absorb everything, you're gonna set that environment for your kids and your future children.
Definitely.
And if it's not correct, and if it's not best environment in terms of deen and in general, who knows what your kids will grow up, right? And you're just gonna end up putting them through the same traumas and same suffering. Your parents will end up putting their grandchildren through the same trauma and same suffering if neither of you learn and fix that home environment.
So we have to end the session. We've gone a little bit over time, but if you've been watching this session throughout, or even clips, the whole focus of this video cast has been on 3 steps to understand today's Muslim youth. And this time around, we've flipped it on its head. We've done it from a youth perspective. To my left is Sumern, to my right is Ejlal. This is Brother Mushtaq with the Happy Strong Family team. Please continue to like and subscribe to this channel. The whole focus of this channel is to focus on youth, on parenting, on marriage from a Islamic